What happens when you arrive at a port of entry in Canada? This may be a land border, a marine harbor, or more commonly, an airport. Whom do you interact with? What questions can they ask you? We'll also quickly touch upon why they ask those questions. Many people have this fear of not knowing what will happen. So today, we'll try to tackle these questions so you're prepared and feel more confident when arriving in Canada. Also, after having this context, hopefully whatever questions you may be asked, even if it's a question you've never heard of before, you'll be able to answer them confidently. Hi, my name is Rashid Ali. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant from Milton, Canada. And through this channel, I share information about Canadian immigration, visas, and citizenship so you can get this information in one place. Now, none of this is legal advice. If you do need legal advice specific to your situation, we can schedule a consultation, do a deeper dive to provide you more clarity and the best way forward. Now, the law of Canada states that whoever enters Canada has to present themselves for an examination at the port of entry. This is the step where you line up and go see one of the officers. These are not visa officers or police officers, they're officers of the Canada Border Services Agency, CBSA, and they are called BSOs or Border Services Officers. So there are typically three types of examinations that can occur when you enter in Canada: primary inspection line, immigration secondary, and custom secondary, which is kind of like a part of immigration secondary. So if you're arriving in Canada by airplane, before you see any officer, you will go to a kiosk known as the primary inspection kiosk. This kiosk allows travelers such as yourself to verify your travel documents, confirm your identity, complete an on-screen declaration. This includes scanning of your passport, your photo is taken, and once completed, this kiosk will print out a receipt that you then present to the BSO, the Border Services Officer. I will try to make a more detailed video on this kiosk later so you know exactly what to expect. So once you have this receipt, you take it and you enter another queue. If you're a Canadian citizen and don't have anything to declare, in most cases, you will show this slip to an officer standing just before the primary inspection line and just exit from there. But most of the people will be asked to line up in the primary inspection line. This is where you will meet a BSO who will ask you for your passport and may ask some questions. Now, this BSO is supposed to keep the line moving and won't ask a lot of questions. So what questions will they ask? Normally, they will ask questions that belong to one of these 6 categories: identity, citizenship, residency, intention, employment, and length of stay. So let's go through them one by one. Identity. They will ask you what is your name, so they can check that the name that you stated is the same as written on your passport. Regarding citizenship, they will ask you what is your citizenship. They ask this to confirm your citizenship because Canadians can enter Canada by right, and so can PRs, as long as they're not inadmissible. For example, they meet the residency obligation. So if you're a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident and as a PR you don't have any inadmissibility, you'll be able to exit from there. And usually they won't ask you any further questions unless you have something to declare. Third category is residency. They will ask you where do you reside. If you are a PR, the officer may ask a follow-up question like how long have you been away. The reason they ask this question is because permanent residents of Canada who haven't spent at least 730 days in Canada in the last 5 years, they are referred to immigration secondary for further processing because they don't meet the residency obligation. Next category is intention. A very common question is what is the purpose of your trip to Canada? By asking this question, the officer can identify the need for a referral to secondary. If you are about to become a PR or you need to get your work or study permit, they will refer you to secondary inspection because those documents can only be processed over there. They have to keep the line moving over here. They won't issue you those documents. So if you are a student or a worker or even a new PR and they send you to immigration secondary after hearing your answer, don't be alarmed. This is part of the process. This is how things are supposed to be. Similarly, let's say you applied for a business visitor visa and mentioned in your application that you will be coming on an exploratory visit to research business options. That was what you mentioned in your application. But now when they ask you what is your purpose of coming to Canada, but you say that you're actually here as a tourist, that can get you into trouble for misrepresentation because the business visitor visa is B1, whereas a tourist visa is V1. Similarly, in your application, if you said that you're actually coming to see your family, but you tell the officer here that you're here for job hunting, that's not good either, which leads us to the next category, which is employment. They might ask you, do you intend to take or seek any employment while in Canada? And they can ask you very casually, right? Just to get the answer. And if you're a visitor and you answer yes to this question, they will refer you for further examination. And this can obviously get you into a lot of trouble because visitors are not allowed to work in Canada. You need a work permit for that. Next category is length of stay. They will ask you, how long do you intend to stay in Canada? If you are a visitor, you can stay in Canada up to 6 months. That is okay. But if someone says more than 6 months, they will will be referred to immigration secondary because you're not supposed to do that as a visitor. If you want to stay longer, you can always apply for an extension later. Also, let's say you are coming here with your family and in your visa application you said you'll be coming to Canada for 2 weeks and now you say I'll be here for 5 months. This can trigger further questioning like, don't you have a job? Don't your kids go to school? If you're really here to meet family, why do you need to be here for 5 months? I hope you can imagine the officer's point of view. They will be concerned. So these are the 6 categories of questions asked at the primary inspection line, the first border services officer you will meet behind the counter. Now, if you have doubts about what will happen or you have some complexity in your situation or you need further clarity, we can have a discussion to clear your doubts, and we can also prepare a package that you can present to the border officer that will make your case easier. Now, if you've been referred for immigration secondary, you will enter a queue into a large room to meet the second border services officer. By the way, occasionally you will see certain people bypassing the line. Don't be offended by it, as they are most probably Canadian citizens. Canadians rarely go through this step, but if they do, the officer at the primary inspection line actually tells them to go to the front of the line. So they are not being rude, they're just following the BSO's instructions. Anyhow, in this immigration secondary, the officer will first of all enter your name and date of birth into the GCMS or the Global Case Management System and conduct a query. This is the same GCMS we refer to when someone has received a refusal on their application or their app is very delayed and we want to see the visa officer's notes to understand what's going on. It is the same system, the Global Case Management System. And also note that this BSO has a lot more time on their hands. There are usually more BSOs in this immigration secondary area than in the primary inspection line, so they take their time if they have to. The questions they will ask at this stage will fall under 7 categories: identity, citizenship, residency, intentions, funds available, personal history, and background. We already spoke about identity, citizenship, intentions, but for residency, this is where if you are a new PR, you will present your COPR and passport to the officer and they will verify the documents. They may ask you about proof of funds and then allow you to enter Canada as a PR. Intentions. Now, some of the questions that may be asked here other than the purpose of your trip are: how long do you intend to stay in Canada? Where in Canada are you planning to go? Do you intend to look for work in Canada? Do you intend to study in Canada? Where will you be staying while in Canada? Hotel, a friend's place, relatives? So these questions may be asked to someone who is not a citizen or a PR. So be prepared. Next category is funds available. Do you have a return ticket? Show it to me, please. What sources of funds do you have access to while you're in Canada? Questions such as these may be asked to determine if you possess the financial means to carry out your intended travel plan. They want to make sure that you depart at the end of your authorized time. The BSOs want to ensure that you will not take unauthorized employment or you will not rely on social assistance while you're in Canada. If you indicate that a friend or a relative will be supporting you, the officer may actually contact that person to verify this information. So ask them to be ready to pick the call. Next category is personal history. Like, what is your occupation? Are you currently employed in your country? Do you intend to visit anyone in Canada? Do you have any family or friends here? If the BSO is concerned that you may not leave Canada at the end of your authorized time, they may conduct further questioning to make sure you have ties to your homeland. There are reasons for you to go back to your homeland. Another category is background. They will ask you, do you have or have you had any health problems? Have you ever been arrested, charged, or convicted of a crime or an offense? Have you ever been refused entry or removed from Canada? They may not ask any of these questions at all, but when they do ask these questions, they want to make sure that you're not inadmissible, because there are certain things that make you inadmissible to Canada. Health, for example, is one of those things. If you pose a threat to public health or safety, for example, if you have some disease that can be transferred to other people in Canada, you pose a risk to their health. If you're coming into Canada for a medical treatment, they will also ask you a few questions about your health condition. So the person's past may be relevant for admissibility. Please note that the BSO may also ask you to view your electronic device like your cell phone. They do need approval from their superintendent or chief prior to doing this, but do remember they can do it if they believe that they have a rationale to do so. They can check your phones. Now, if you have something to declare like funds over 10,000 Canadian dollars or some commercial goods, etc., you may be asked to see another BSO called the custom secondary. Now, this is where they may ask you to open your bags for a search. They may ask you to show them the cash you brought with you and even count it. They also have dogs that they sometimes bring to sniff the luggage. If you have to meet them, don't be nervous. It's a routine part of the process. Now, a few questions that they may ask you: did you pack your luggage yourself? Are you carrying items that someone else gave you? Do you have something to declare? These were some of the questions. I was just giving you some context, like whom can you expect to meet, what kind of questions can they ask you. Obviously they can ask you other questions, but if you have this context, if you know why they're asking you these questions, hopefully you can answer these questions without being nervous and you're prepared. I hope you found this video to be helpful and it makes your entry into Canada a bit easier. If you would like to discuss your case in detail or have specific questions, we can schedule a call and I'll put a link in the description for that. I'll also post a follow-up video on this topic. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon.